If that's all there is, then the Hezbollah response to the murder of Shukr, their deputy commander, is mere artifice. If that's all there is, 340 drones instead of 3,000 ballistic missiles as frequently trailed, then Israel will definitely be able to live with that. And the early signs are that they are prepared to do so. The leader of Hezbollah, Said Hassan Nasrallah, has said that they will decide whether to attack again once they see how the attack today took place, if it was successful or not. We'll never know that from the Israeli side because they have imposed an almost blanket military censorship over any footage of any damage done by the 340 Hezbollah drones. But it's not likely that the damage was to civilian areas. It's not likely that the damage got more than 10 kilometers away from Tel Aviv. It's not likely that anything hit the most strategic of Israeli targets, which calls into question whether or not there was a negotiated end to this front. Not an end to the front altogether, because Hezbollah have promised to fire on Israel every day, because their overarching goal is the liberation of Palestine, the relief of the people of Gaza. But it may very well be that there has been a coordinated end to the particular casus belli of the murder of Mr. Shukr in Beirut. We'll know when we see the response from the other 2 or maybe 3 participants in the Axis who have promised to respond to the ongoing crimes and atrocities of the Israeli government. The first of those is quite likely to be from Yemen. Yemen, which defeated the US Navy, the US Navy's words, not mine, and which has got the EU and the UK navies all tied up with nowhere to go in the Red Sea, may very well have a determination greater than that shown by Hezbollah earlier today. It may very well be that the main retaliation comes from Yemen. Yemen have promised that they are cocked and ready to fire, and we'll see what happens next. But the big enchilada, of course, as always, is Iran. Iran have promised so many times that the clock is ticking, that the engines are burning, that the propellers are turning, that it would be a major, major loss of face for Iran if its response was not of a significantly more important order than that Hezbollah delivered today. And I still expect that to happen. Or there may have been behind the scenes all kinds of promises made and negotiations haggled over that neither you nor I know about. But we will know when we see the targets, when we see the quality, when we see the quantity of the ordnance that lands on Netanyahu's head in the next 24, 48, 72 hours or so. If we're lucky, there'll be no broader Middle East war. If we're lucky, the Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier, which now sits just off Iran, will not be used. If we are lucky, the Marines will not land on the beach in Beirut. If we're lucky, the balloon will not go up and World War III will not take place in the Middle East, at least. Indeed, it has become very much more likely that that balloon will go up in the Ukraine. In the Ukraine proxy conflict between NATO and the Russian Federation. And I'll be turning at some length to that over the course of the show this evening with one of the most important English-speaking guests available in Russia by a country mile. Che Bose, the Irish man who knows everything there is to know about what's going on at the front and what's going on in the Kremlin. So let me move to France. I don't mean actually move to France. If I was ever thinking of doing that, then today's events are a salutary reminder that that would be a bad idea. First of all, Macron has carried out a coup against the French Republic, a coup against the French Constitution. There were elections in France 49 days ago, called by Macron, deliberately before the Olympic Games, in which he asked for an Olympic truce. He called those elections after the severe drubbing that his party received from the National Front leader, Marine Le Pen. He thought that the French would rally behind him, but they did not. Macron came last in the elections. He came third in the elections. Le Pen second. And my friend Jean-Luc Mélenchon and his Popular Front came first. Albeit it's a broad front, and albeit it's not any single party victory. But it's a very clear majority that now exists in the French Assembly Nationale to form a government, which according to the French Constitution must now happen. But Macron first demanded that no government, including any of Mélenchon's party, could be tolerated by him because, he said, they're anti-Semites. Their hatred of Israel, their support for the Palestinian people has been twisted, mutated into that foul allegation that we know in Britain oh so well. He will not accept any of Mélenchon's ministers, and therefore he cannot agree to form a government based on the parliamentary majority elected 49 days ago. So Mélenchon wrong-footed him. He announced, that's fine, none of my party will be ministers in the new Popular Front government. Now go ahead and implement your constitutional Republican presidential duties. And Macron has again refused. This means that the French people have been tricked. This means that the French people have been fooled by a president almost bereft of political support in the country. There are many places in the world where it would be safe for a would-be dictator, a little Napoleon, many places where it would be safe to do that. But France is not one of them. The French people are not among the world's fools. The French people know how to rid themselves of tyranny. They have done it many times before with bloody and gory effect. And so the clock is now ticking in France as to what the French people's response will be to the flagrant abuse of power that little Macron has now carried out. But that wasn't the only crime that was committed in France today. The hijacking of a private plane carrying the owner of Telegram, the founder and owner, one of the world's richest and most powerful businessmen, the hijacking of his plane at Charles de Gaulle Airport would have done any terrorist group in the world proud. It was a perfectly executed hit. It was the issuing of an arrest warrant for someone headed for France after they had taken off headed for France, merely for refueling. And it was a deliberate attempt to swarm the airfield and seize the owner of Telegram on the tarmac, on the steps. And that's what they have done. They say that it's because on Telegram there are far too many child sexual abuse pictures, groups, and chat. But that's a lie, because Telegram is not even in the top 8 of the main platforms in the world where such content is to be found by the depraved. In fact, Instagram and Facebook, both owned by Zuckerberg, are leagues ahead of the rest of the pack of places where you can find such obscenity, such wickedness. There are 8 at least ahead of Telegram in those grisly stakes. It's said that on Telegram you can buy hard drugs. Well, you can buy hard drugs in many places, I'm reliably told. The idea that you would seize the owner of Telegram because some people have bought hard drugs on a platform that he founded and makes available to the public is a pretty big stretch. The real reason they seized him was because of the worldwide, Western worldwide, elimination, man by man, platform by platform, of dissenting voices or voices who will not collaborate with those cracking down on the dissenting voices. One after another, they came for TikTok, and I did not protest because I was not 12 years old. They forced TikTok to be sold to American billionaires. They stole it from its owners. They shanghaied its Chinese owners into selling the platform to them. Not because of 12-year-old girls improperly clad, dancing improperly on TikTok videos, but because they knew the reach and power of TikTok was such that any political messaging that began to gain track on that platform was a problem for them. That's why the European Union is threatening Elon Musk with dire sanctions, and after what's happened to the Telegram boss, I strongly advise Elon Musk not to come to Europe, even to the court hearing he has with me in September in Dublin. Don't come, Elon. I've been asking you to come, but don't come now, because you cannot be sure that you will not meet the same fate. They have arrested journalists, some of them distinguished diplomats, like our friend Craig Murray, the honourable former ambassador for Britain in Uzbekistan, like Kit Klarenberg, having to base himself outside of Britain freely to practice the free speech that the British always claimed was their leitmotif, if you'll forgive the French. They arrested, the FBI swooped on Scott Ritter and took away all his devices. And our very own Richard Medhurst, as you saw on our program the other day, was treated like a terrorist, arrested under Section 12, first time anyone's been arrested, under Section 12 of the Terrorism Act. The others were arrested under Section 7. Section 12 is much more serious. He was handcuffed. He was arrested in front of the other passengers on his arriving flight at Heathrow. He was held incommunicado. No one, not his parents, not his lawyer, not his hosts, at an open-air conference taking place in the south of England. Nobody knew if Richard Medhurst was alive or dead, if he'd been kidnapped, and if so, by whom. But he was kidnapped, all right, but by the British state under bogus application of Section 12 of the Terrorism Act. One by one, man by man, woman by woman, platform by platform, they are preparing tyranny and dictatorship in the Western world. And there's a reason for it. And that reason is that they are preparing for all-out war with the Russian Federation. I picked up a book in Waterstones the other day by a woman who should know, and I'll show you the book later in the program. It is the nearest thing you're going to get before the blast as a picture of what will happen if this war that we are involved in with Russia turns nuclear. You'd be well to read it fast, because it may be coming our way very much quicker than we expected. The threat by Zelensky today to fire NATO-supplied rockets at St. Petersburg and at Moscow is a threat which can only be described as a harbinger of World War III. If NATO weapons rain down on Moscow and on St. Petersburg, with some of the Western governments pretending they never authorized that, but the British government up to its neck in that, then there's no holds barred. There wouldn't just be pressure on Putin to step up the war. There would be an irresistible force brought to bear on him to activate Russia's nuclear protocols, which are plainly, shortly, any existential threat to the existence of the Russian Federation, allows a first use of nuclear weapons by the Russian armed forces. And firing on the capital and on the former capital of Russia with NATO weapons very definitely constitutes that. The madcap invasion of Kursk by Zelensky has failed. 5,000 more young and old Ukrainian men and women have lost their lives in a public relations stunt. The forces that invaded Russia have been surrounded, crushed, destroyed. The German tanks that rolled into Kursk for the first time since the Red Army's victory in 1943, which turned the tide of the Second World War exactly at Kursk, have been destroyed. 24 German Leopard Panzers entered Russia in 2024. 20 of them have already been destroyed. But the wreckage will not be confined to the province of Kursk. It is now ineluctable that the maximum war aims of Russia be prosecuted until success. The Donbass is practically completely liberated, but other places stand out like a sore thumb. The sorest of those is the most Russian of all cities, the city of Odessa. The sore thumb of hundreds of thousands of Russian people in Transnistria, stranded between a hostile NATO nativist Romania and the dictatorship of Zelensky in Kiev, cannot be left surely marooned, only to be destroyed between these two revanchist forces. Transnistria will have to be liberated. Odessa will have to be liberated. The former idea of a negotiated settlement based on Russia keeping what it holds, Ukraine keeping what Russia doesn't hold, and remaining a naval power, remaining a power with access to the seaboard at Odessa, is surely now dead and buried. With the hundreds of thousands of dead Ukrainians and Russians who have all died for NATO, all died for Joe Biden and the succession of British prime ministers, all died for little soldier Schultz, all died for little Emperor Macron. No one will be able to forgive what's happening in Kursk, in Ukraine, what's happening at the Al-Aqsa hospital this evening, what's happening in the Khan Yunis refugee camps, in the tiny areas to which hundreds of thousands of defenseless refugees are cascading from one place to the other on a daily basis, starving, dying of thirst, and now dying of polio. The first confirmed 10-year-old child died from polio in Gaza yesterday. The polio spores will not be restricted to the Gaza Strip. The war in Ukraine will not be restricted to Ukraine. We're about to talk to a very important American guest about the dramatic developments in American politics this week. It's Kim Iverson coming up right after this.